My name is Shirley Davis. I'm 72 years old. I'm a widow, a retired teacher, and I live alone in a modest house that took me 3 decades to pay for. Brick by brick. Now, one say Fort Banta at Auckland here in Decatur, Georgia. And now, tell me, how is it that the woman who raised a child with her own hands, do you end up being slapped by your own daughter-in-law inside the house you built? I know it sounds absurd, and maybe you're trying to understand what happened for a story to get to this point. I've also asked myself this question because it is not easy to accept that the same home where I welcomed so many people became the scene of my greatest humiliation. But maybe you're watching it because you also feel that tightness in your chest. Maybe I also gave everything to someone, and today it is forgotten, used, or replaced. If that's your case, I understand, because it happened to me. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything. No screaming, no lies, only the truth of who was ground. And then it became a step for others to climb. You will understand how it all started, what they did to me, and especially what I did afterwards, because that key she tried to snatch from me, it opened much more than a door. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Not every crack you hear comes from anger. Sometimes it's the sound of a lifetime breaking in silence. That day, in the backyard of my own home, in front of a table full of guests and still hot dishes, she reached out, not to hug me, nor to thank me. Nay, he reached out to snatch the key from me. And when I hesitated, the slap came dry, as if erasing my existence right there, in the middle of the party. I didn't fall. I didn't cry. But inside me, something lifted with a force that even I didn't know I had. Before continuing, I was so calm. I want to ask something from you who are here listening to me. If this story touches your heart, if in any way it seems like something you have lived or seen someone else live, support me with a like, with your subscription to the channel. Not because of the algorithm, but because telling it here hurts. And when we share the pain with those who understand, it weighs less. I'm telling this story so they don't let them erase what I was. And maybe, without knowing it, well, I'm telling yours too. I remember with such fondness the times when my house was full of life, the smell of fried chicken with paprika seasoning that I learned from my mother, the sounds of Marcus, laughter, playing dominoes with his schoolmates, the shoes scattered in the entrance, as if everyone there felt at home. I insisted. He always said, as long as I have strength, my door will be open. And it was. That house was my temple, my pride, no desir, yada my whole world. I might not have much, but within those walls, everyone found shelter, and it was there, among embroidered dish towels and hand-picked furniture at Sunday markets, that I felt useful. But after Marcus married Juliet, something changed, and it wasn't all at once. It started as a strange breeze, which enters through cracks, and you don't even notice it. Juliet, with that cold smile of someone who praises hurting, looked around with the eyes of those who evaluate, not those who appreciate. Do you still have that couch? She said the first time. Then it was the curtain, the tablecloth, Naya, and he's some charged, arms in order to contribute. Even the pictures with verses that had been there since Marcus was little. She said that my style was vintage, but the tone was not one of affection. It was disguised shame. I pretended not to notice. Love for my son made me swallow everything. Because I thought, oh, twice young, it must be her way. And also because, deep down, I still believed that time sets things right. But time sometimes only reveals it. There was a day when she said, laughing, "Well, did you ounce on what you were here? What? This microwave is older than us." Marcus laughed. I smiled on the outside, but on the inside, it hurt. Because I bought that microwave with the first bonus I received for teaching in 3 shifts. It was more than a household appliance. It was a symbol of a difficult phase. But, overcome, I began to notice that visits were getting shorter. They came 8, now, and were already up. When they were there, they talked to each other, with cell phones in hand, as if they were just passing through. The conversations have changed. Before, Marcus asked me about my days, my pains, my memories. Now, it was just, "Where's the charger?" "Oh, down. Is there internet here? Or we're going to leave soon." We just pass quickly. And me? I became invisible inside my own house. Once, I went to offer coffee and heard Julieta say, without noticing that I was around, "Mas, Owen." She always does this, as if we had time. That cut me off, because offering a coffee, no, for me, was a gesture of love, nudis, not of discomfort. I started to put less sugar in the teapot, and more silence at the table. Still, now, I helped as I could. I contributed with the wedding gift. I paid part of their rent when Marcus' job became unstable. I made dinner at Christmas. On New Year's Eve, I presented Juliet's mother-in-law, whom I barely knew, with a woolen scarf. Nay, what is alcohol? And I didn't do it expecting anything in return. But I also didn't expect to be forgotten so quickly. On one of those nights, I sat in the living room and looked around. The same room where Marcus ran with his schoolwork, where he cried when he lost his first girlfriend, where we celebrated when he passed university. Now, it was like a faded scenery, as if my story no longer fits. The old teacher who spent her life correcting essays. Now, it was the one that was being corrected. "Don't talk like that, you, Mom," he said when I used old expressions. "This is an old man's thing." I smiled. I know, because I still had a smile left. But inside, I had already started to disappear. How many times does a woman need to be ignored until she accepts that she is no longer part of the scene? How many unspoken words also hurt? If you've ever felt that sense of being present and at the same time absent in the lives of those you love. Comment below. Amen. Means zero. He writes, only, I understand, or I've lived it, or even it touched me, because when we share pain, it spreads, and when it spreads, it weighs less. At that time, no cow, I still thought that I could regain my place with sweetness, that all it took was one more dinner, one more compliment, one more memory of everything I was and did. I still believed. But the problem is that not everyone wants to remember. And some, you, they make a point of forgetting. And it was just when I thought things couldn't get worse that I received the first wound that didn't come out in a photo, but that changed everything. And you know what they say about those who enter your house smiling. Sometimes it's the one who takes you out of it. It was a spring Saturday, one of those when Atlanta is filled with perfume and the flowers on the balcony seem to smile at those who pass by. I woke up early, washed my face calmly, and went straight to the kitchen. I took the good porcelain, the one with golden edges that I inherited from my mother-in-law, back in the days when we respected tradition. I made jasmine tea with lemon. Wow, the way Marcus always liked it when he was a boy. I bought handmade cookies at a market on Church Street, set the table on the porch with the hand-embroidered tablecloth, and put on some soft music playing on the old radio. I wanted everything to be perfect. It was their first visit after weeks without news. His heart was beating in a hurry, but full of hope. When I heard the car parking, I adjusted the scarf around my neck and went to the door. They entered without looking around. No while. Juliet with her sunglasses still on her face, and Marcus answering a message on his cell phone. No hugs. No. How are you? Mom. Anne. My eyes. Just a hi. Dry? Like someone who arrives at an office. Juliet took off her glasses and, now, looking around with that gaze that measures, not that she feels, let go, almost in a whisper, but loud enough for me to hear. There's a musty smell here. My chest tightened. Moi. I pretended I didn't hear. Marcus said nothing. He pretended too. I invited them both to sit on the porch. The table was beautiful. The sun was beating lightly, and the tea was still releasing that warm steam that embraces. But no one sat down. Juliet looked at her watch. He said they had an appointment soon and could not delay. I insisted. No, I insisted, quietly, almost as if asking, just a tea. Marcus, I prepared it with so much care. He replied without looking up. Mom, we're a little rushed today. I'll wait next time. I'll wait for next time. As if a mother were a public office. As if affection had an agenda. I stood with my hands clasped in front of my apron while they stood in the room for 10 minutes, talking about matters that didn't include me. When they got up, Julietta patted me twice on the shoulder and said, "And, why don't you? Well, talk to each other. Okay?" And they left. Like this. No tea, no hug, no story. I stood there on the porch, alone. Looking at the table set. The teapot is still hot. The biscuit still whole. The silence. This one had been served for a long time, and at that time, without tears, without words, I understood. It wasn't that I was being forgotten. I had already been. It was at that moment that I realized that I was no longer the owner of the house. I was an unwanted guest in it, and worse, an invisible nuisance. I sat in the rocking chair, listened to the last song end, oh, and let the tea cool unhurriedly. I so calm because that day it will or it hasn't sound. It a bit so comfort, so it you as had been refused. It was me. And if until then I still dreamed of reconciliation, it was from that Saturday that I started to wake up for good. But do you know what hurts more than contempt? It is to realize that it was planned. And that's when it all started to take shape, because what they wanted, it went far beyond excluding me. They wanted what it took me a lifetime to build, and they were about to ask in a way that no one would forget. That afternoon, I just wanted to sort out a silly detail about my income tax. I thought it would be quick. I went to the bank with my little black bag, the same one I carry every spring, put my flowered scarf around my neck, and walked slowly to the branch in East Ponce. I have known that manager for years. He calls me Mrs. Davis with that respect that seems to have disappeared in the world. That's Tuesday night Shagwadi Shokshawa. But that day, his smile took a long time to appear. He fiddled with the papers, frowned and said, "Oh, are you sure you authorized this second financing?" I froze. Financing? He turned the screen to me, and there it was. My name as a co-signer of a high credit, made 2 months ago, attached to Marcus' name. My heart tightened, but I kept my posture. Why? I swallowed. No, not Raphael. Thanked him for the information, and returned home as if returning from a wake. At home, wonder down. I sat at the kitchen table with the electricity bill still closed next to it. I looked at nothing. Then, to myself, and I asked myself, at what point did my son start to see me as a shortcut, not as a mother? I called him that night. He answered on the third ring, his voice muffled. I said, calm, I knew I could tell, because if there's one thing that time has taught me, it's not to scream. Marcus, why's my name on a bank loan that I never consciously signed? He hesitated. Now, then she said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Wow. Oh, Mom, it was Juliet's thing. She thought it would be easier to get with her name. We were going to change later. I was speechless, not because I had nothing to say, but because if I did, I would collapse. He said something else about ease. Momentary. It wasn't bad. I thanked him for the call and hung up. Only later did I realize that my hands were shaking, not for the money, not by the bank, but because for the first time in my life, I felt used by the ones I loved the most. My name, Myers, one day wanna come to you. My signature, my clean record of a lifetime. Out. Everything I built with sacrifice became a tool to make life easier for those who already ignored me inside their own home. That wasn't just a piece of paper with numbers. It was concrete proof that they no longer saw me as a mother. They saw me as a ladder, mom, iron tout, as a shortcut, as a useful name. I spent the night awake. I have reviewed every gesture of the last few months. The quick visits, the contempt in words, the discomfort in the looks. And there, nice, in the dark of my room, Annie dropped. Then, all that was not by chance. It was construction. It was flat. And I, old as I am, had been left in the role of an extra until I was needed again. But anyone who thinks I cried is wrong. No. That morning, I started to assemble my briefcase. I took copies of everything, from the will, from the deed of the house, from the statements. I put everything in order, as if I were my own student. The teacher I was once came back that night, but now I wasn't going to correct essays. It was going to correct fates. Because when I realized that my name was being taken as if it were any other object, I understood. Whoa, contagion, Achan. If I didn't do anything, they would take away my soul. But I had a plan, and a truth they didn't know yet. The woman who spends her life taking care of he also knows how to protect himself. Wait, and what I found out after that is even worse. Have you ever seen what happens when they try to erase a story that is still alive? That's that. Because what was to come? It was going to show that the coup was not only financial, it was emotional. And he was about to knock on my door with a fake smile and a proposal that was impossible to swallow. It was supposed to be any night. I had just watered my ferns, put on my blue cotton pajamas, and prepared a light porridge with cinnamon. Sitting in the rocking chair, and so dedicated to you. I was finishing answering an old letter that a friend from Savannah had sent me weeks ago. A rare thing nowadays. People who still write with their own hand. But that night, the one who knocked on the gate was the neighbor in front of us, Donna, who always stops by to bring warm gossip and dry bread from the church. She came in smiling. Said something about the weather, and showed me some photos on her cell phone. Look, Shirley, Marcus showed up here on Facebook. At such a beautiful dinner. Everyone gathered. Look at what a beautiful table. Wow, Anna Leona. I looked, not out of curiosity, but out of habit. And there was the photo. Marcus, with that shirt I bought him 2 Christmases ago, smiling next to Juliet. There was a lighted candle, glasses of wine, and tidy people sitting around. I recognized some of their friends, and in the background, between the laughter and dishes served, was a lady I had never seen in person. Juliet's mother came from Tampa. What? Did you know? Asked Donna, distractedly. I shook my head. No. But inside, I didn't even feel it anymore. The caption of the photo read, "Complete family reunited." Complete. The word burned. Not because I expected an invitation, but because I didn't even know that mother-in-law was in town. And seeing that smile on Juliet's face, serving the dish to her, was like watching a movie where I had already been cut from the story. I put out the fire in the stove, thanked Donna for her visit, and stayed there, with the porridge cooling and the brisket too. I didn't cry, not at that moment, but for the first time in many years, I didn't make my bed. Oh, I didn't even fold the blanket on the sofa. I just sat on the edge, as if waiting for news that doesn't arrive. I was looking at my plants on the balcony. Ah, some were withered. Ah, others flourished unaided. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm the same. One part alive, the other already giving up. Mild yawn. Exclusion is a kind of death that no one sees. It's like gradually disappearing from the memories of others. The worst thing is that you are there, whole, walking, breathing, serving coffee, and oh my. But for them, it's no longer part of it. I repeated quietly, they have already decided to erase me. Now. And it was there that I really began to understand. The blow was not only in the pocket, it was in the heart. They didn't just want the house, the name. The signature? No. I have not fought to use to here and still. At least, they wanted the freedom to live without me. They wanted to rewrite history without the author around. And that night, my silence turned into a decision. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, as if the world you built had changed the lock and you weren't even warned. But if this story is touching something inside, leave a like here for me. Wow. Subscribe to the channel. It's not by number. You're not. No, it's because I'm here, opening my heart, telling everything with the courage that only pain gives. And I still have a lot to tell you. Because what they didn't know, it's just that while they were taking pictures of a family that seemed perfect, I was already taking copies of everything that really mattered. But you know what shocked me the most after that? He didn't go to see the photo. It was to find out what Juliet said about me that night. After the toast, that's it. I'll tell you in the next part. That Monday, I woke up to the sound of birds in the window, and a silence that already seemed all too familiar. It was my birthday. 73 years of life. No, 73. I'd so mile. I thought to myself, no, maybe he'll call before going to work. Maybe he'll text you for breakfast. I got up slowly, nodded again, put on my pink lacy sleeve blouse, the same one I wore at Marcus' christening, combed my hair with care, as if dressing up to be remembered. I made my coffee, set the table with 2 cheese breads, a cup of tea, and a little flower from the balcony. I was waiting. The phone sat there, mute, like a dog that has lost its sense of smell. Time went by. The sun was already hitting the wall of the living room, and no sign. I opened my phone to check if it was working. I called Marcus. Number. Visited. What call? He called once. Then it went straight to voicemail. I tried to think of excuses for him. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he had forgotten his cell phone in some corner. Please still you would try it. Perhaps. I spent the morning tidying up the kitchen drawers. well, just to occupy my hands. I had lunch alone. We, frozen beans with rice and pumpkin. I made a salad with care, Mutiso, as if someone was going to show up. Well, but no one showed up. No one. In the afternoon, I went to the market just to see people, to hear voices other than mine. I bought flour, eggs, and a bar of semi-sweet chocolate. I went back home and decided I'm going to make my cake. Even if it's just for me. I prepared the dough calmly, as I did every year. Baking that cake was more than a habit. It was my way of not letting it go unnoticed. As he grew in the oven, my chest shrank with each minute. A weight settled deeper. When the cake was ready, I slowly unmolded, sprinkled sugar on top, and placed a candle in the center. I sat at the table, lit the candle, and, with a choked voice, sang alone the saddest happy birthday of my life. For me, myself, I took a picture, as I had done since I became a widow, to keep in the album. But this year, not even the click of the camera made a sound. Well, I ate a small slice and kept the rest. At midnight, I went to my bedroom, put on my pajamas, and sat on the edge of the bed. That's when the tears came. Not many, but dense, quiet. I cried without noise, because even my pain didn't seem to bother me. I was ashamed. No, shame of still waiting, shame of still believing, because their silence was no longer an occasional forgetfulness. It was a decision, and I still insisted on making excuses for those who had already deleted me from the agenda. That night, I took out an old hardcover notebook, sat down at the desk, and handwrote a letter. Not to send, not to show, but to put it on record. And I put the title, No, Visera, There Are None, Things I Learned in Silence. And I began. I learned that love does not guarantee presence, that blood does not guarantee respect, and that loneliness, when it comes from the one we love the most, hurts like a dull knife, which doesn't cut for good, but hurts by repetition. When so harnessy one with your town. I wrote until my eyes were heavy, folded, and I left the letter inside the Bible that is next to the bed. I turned off the light and slept the way only those who don't expect anything can sleep. Deep. And it was in this sleep, at the bottom of the well, that something began to change. Because sometimes, when we break, it's also the moment when we start to be reborn. What they didn't know, it's just that letter was more than an outburst. It was the beginning of a decision. And what Marcus asked me days later, it would be the point of no return. Do you have any idea what someone might have the courage to ask for? When has it all taken from you? That's that. I didn't have it either. Until that phone call. It was a cold Sunday. One of those when the sky doesn't seem to wake up properly, and the silence of the street enters through the window without asking permission. I was making my tea, my hands still cold from the night. The teapot sizzled softly on the stove when I heard the doorbell ring. I didn't expect anyone. I opened the door, and, to my surprise, it was Juliet, alone, notice, dressed as if she were going to brunch in downtown Atlanta, but with the look of someone who came to settle the matter. Marcus is busy today, he said. No, as if that justified the visit. He entered without waiting for an invitation. She sat in the armchair that belonged to my husband. He crossed his legs slowly. Wow. I remained standing, with the dishcloth still in my hands. The smell of tea was beginning to invade the room, but the air was heavy. Julieta was direct. Surely, then calm. We've been thinking. This house is too big for you, don't you think? A lot of work for one person. We were talking, and we thought it would be good for you to consider. Move. My heart jumped, but my face didn't move. She continued, I'm now gone. I watch us, pocketpires, fiddling with the golden ring she always wore. You can go to a smaller, now, more practical place, something that matches your level. Moi, then sure, we would take over here. Everything is already discussed. I looked at her as if watching a storm about to fall. Her every word was like wind pushing through the windows of my story. She then leaned over and held out her hand, as if offering a gift. Can you hand us the key? We can start with the guest room. Leave it with our face. I took a deep breath, long. My whole body wanted to tremble, scream, get up from my chair as if in fright. But no, I'm one of those who learned that strength, really, is to maintain tone. I looked at her from behind my now steaming cup and said, This house has a soul, and she doesn't recognize your presence. She laughed, as if she were amused by a superstitious old woman. Wow. But it was more than a phrase. It was a warning, because there, alone, on that cold morning, something in me ignited. An invisible thread connected all the memories of that house, the cries, the parties, my husband's sweat when he lifted the fence in the backyard, the smell of Marcus' notebook when he did homework in the living room, the portraits that were now kept in the drawer, because Julieta said they polluted the environment. That house was not only wood, cement, and ceramics. It was the last living piece of my story, and she wanted to erase it. Juliet stood up without saying anything else. He took his bag and left as if he had solved something, but he didn't realize that. When he left a crack in the mask, because on that day, it wasn't just her who revealed her intention. I revealed who I was, and even if in silence, I began to regain my space. If you've come this far, thinking you've seen the worst, I can assure you, the most memorable moment is yet to come, because what happens when someone thinks they can take everything from a woman, without waiting for her to react? I remained there, sitting, with the tea cooling in the cup. But inside, what heated up was a decision, because when Juliet crossed that gate thinking she was winning, she didn't even dream of what I was about to do. And the following Saturday, in front of 130 people, she would taste her own arrogance. The barbecue was Marcus' idea, to bring the family together. What? He said, as if that still existed. I accepted out of politeness, but I already knew that there was poison in the seasoning. I kept quiet, as usual, but I prepared the yard with the same care as always. A clean wooden table, chairs in place, and flowers picked from the porch. The smell of meat filled the air, mixed with that warm wind that only Atlanta has in spring. Many came, their friends, co-workers, new neighbors who had never set foot there. Few greeted me. Many looked at me as if I were a forgotten relic in the corner of the room. I was wearing my blue dress, the same one I wore to Marcus' wedding. It looked good on me, but I felt Juliet's eyes cutting me, like someone who evaluates etiquette in an expensive store. Her laughter was already loud before the wine. After a few glasses, it became a mockery. It started with loose comments, disguised as fun. Shirley is from the old days. People, ma. She even keeps electricity bills from the 90s. Laughs. There are people who think that these old people's houses have a soul. I just smell mold. Louder laughter, and newcomers. I continued to sit, holding my glass of iced tea. But then she said, much louder, much louder. The old woman still thinks she owns something around here. The silence fell like a stone. The guests looked at each other. No. I stood up, calmly. Nana did it sound, humbly. I walked to the center of the circle, looking at each one with the serenity of someone who doesn't need to prove anything else. I looked at her with steady eyes and said, if I'm old now, Juliet, it's because I've lived long enough to know who's who. She approached with that air of someone who had never heard a no in her life. He reached into my front pocket, where I usually keep the keychain in the house, and pulled, triumphant. Now on, good is you. Then stop, pretending that this house is still yours. He lifted the key as a trophy. One, woo. Her laughter echoed, wow. But at that moment, I held her hand. Slowly, I fell, firmly, and before anyone could react, the snap came. The denial, the slap, dry, hot, on the left side of my face. An even greater silence took over the air. The music stopped. The smell of the meat became sickening. I didn't fall. No, I wasn't even shaken. I just stared at her, and with the voice that I used for 40 years in the classroom, I said, no, thank you. Now you've set me free. My dear teacher worked hard. Oh, and there, with my face still burning, something inside me calmed down, because, finally, in front of everyone, she showed who she was, and I didn't have to explain anything to anyone anymore. Have you experienced this? That moment when humiliation turns into clarity? In what way does pain become liberation? If so, write here in the comments, even if it's just I understand you or I've felt that. Because these stories, when they are told, are not just for hurting, they are for waking up. I went back inside. Real. The door down. I said him see still down. Closed the door calmly, and sat down at the table. For the first time in a long time, I ate in peace. Outside, the buzz grew, but inside, it was good silence. And that night, I made the final decision, because when someone attacks you like this, in front of everyone, it's because they think it will never have consequences. But the consequence, it was already on its way, and they had no idea where I kept my true strength. The next morning, the sun hadn't even risen properly when I was already up. The face still burned a little from the slap. Oh, but the chest. Ah, my chest was calm, as it hadn't been for years. I prepared my coffee calmly. I put on my gray ensemble, the one I only wear on serious occasions. I took the blue folder, the one I had been secretly feeding with copies of the deed. Old will, letters, bills, and even the note of the first paid financing. I left the house without making a sound. The morning air cut through my skin, but inside me something burned that was no longer sorrow. It was a decision. Now you are cutting my how. I took the bus line 36, got off 2 blocks before the registry office, as if walking to a new chapter. I entered. Greeted the receptionist with the same smile I always carried, and waited. No, when I was called, when I handed the entire folder to the attendant and asked him to call someone to make a new will official. He said firmly, I want it to be recorded there, in black and white, nicest job, that this house and all my possessions will not belong to anyone in my family. The boy looked at me surprised. I just added, ciao, what shall they say you Cornell? I have my reasons. And so are the documents? Signed. Nobody. Without hesitation. I named Casa Esperanza as the sole heir, an institution that shelters elderly women in situations of abandonment, which I met years ago when I went to give a lecture on education in the elderly. I remembered every face I saw that day. Women like me, with stories, with stories, wrinkles and wounds, but invisible. And I decided my inheritance goes to those who know the value of a home. I asked them to include strong clauses, undeniable, that would prevent any future contestation. Marcus' name was withdrawn. No, Juliet's was never there. I left the registry office with the papers in hand, my legs firm and a new lightness on my back. On the way back, I called my lawyer, Hunts, Mr. Leonard McCall, a longtime friend, a serious man who always treated me as an equal. I explained everything. He listened in silence, as he always does. In the end, he only said, wise decision. Surely, count on me. And I could count on it. I returned home and, for the first time in a long time, I felt that she received me in peace. It was mine again, but now, not by the document, by the act, by choice, for the courage not to accept being erased. I went to the kitchen, took my apron off the hook, and prepared beans. the old way, with bay leaf, pounded garlic, and thyme. While cooking, oh, I let the radio play an old song. Georgia on my mind, Ateshter, How. And for the first time in months, I sang softly together. I ate alone, known, and it was the tastiest dinner I've had since my husband's funeral, because now every spoonful was a reminder. I didn't miss it. I came back to myself. Well, that night, before going to bed, we, um, I glanced once again at the papers already organized in a new folder. The red one, my silk, how. I closed it carefully, put it on the highest shelf in the closet, and wrote a label. Destination chosen with dignity. Wow. Through. And I slept peacefully, because what was to come, it was already written. But do you think they would accept this quietly? That Juliet, with all her venom, not only on, would swallow this decision without reaction? For what did she do when she found out? Exceeded any limit. Now, and when I say any, it's because I didn't even imagine what she would be capable of. I went to Leonard's office on a heavy Thursday, that kind of gray cloud that seems to know what we keep in our chest. I've known Leonard for over 20 years. Oh, piercing and tired. He was my husband's lawyer. Then he took care of our inventory, wound up the retirement papers, my, everything that required precision. He calls me Mrs. What? Davis to this day, with that respect that is not learned in books. When I arrived, he had already prepared a thick folder, none, divided into colored flaps. I sat in front of his desk and took a deep breath. It was time to see, in black and white, why, Nasia, what they had done to me, and what I was doing for myself. He opened the folder calmly, explained it to me item by item. Nay, I had been gathering evidence for months. Bank statements with transactions I didn't recognize. Medical appointments that were in my plan, but never happened. Even credit card applications in my name, made online with addresses that were not mine. Everything was there. Leonard looked me in the eye and said, "You did well to keep everything. Every little detail here becomes a shield." Asim calm, one another else. I just shook my head. There was no more room for anger, only strategy, my own. But what he told me next, it was what really took my breath away for a few seconds. "Surely," he said, opening a sealed envelope, "I want to town until here." There was a formal attempt to transfer the title to your house to a company. I frowned. Nile Arcio, a fictitious holding company, registered in the name of a third party, based in Orlando, Florida. The goal was to remove the good from your name without you realizing it. He placed the records of the transfer attempt on the table. The name of the company was somewhat generic, Sapphire Living Group, LLC. But what really hurt was to see, among the fake signatures, Marcus' handwriting scanned. Why, cold, soulless, me. I didn't say anything. I just closed my eyes for a moment. I took a deep breath, and then I looked at Leonard and said, formalize everything. Annul any previous authorization, any power of attorney. I want to shield this house. No. I want protection clauses at all levels, and I want a fund registered in my name, exclusive, that ensures that no one will touch what is mine as long as I live. He agreed. I know. He took the pen and began to write. There. Nicaea. No connections. In that office silence with the smell of old paper and cold coffee, I felt like I was coming back to myself with each page signed. When he asked me if I wanted to change my will again, I just replied, no. I haven't taken myself out of the story. Leonard Mahal. I just deleted the wrong names. And if you are here, listening to all this, walking with me on this road of pain, lucidity, and strength, I ask you one thing. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will you help me carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because there are many people being erased in silence. And if my voice can help a single person to get up, it was worth it. I returned home that day with the documents firmly inside my bag, the attentive eyes, and the soul on its feet. Now, here, everything was armored, and I was sure that nothing, absolutely nothing, would be moved without my knowledge. But we know those who play dirty do not accept losing with dignity. And the following Saturday, when Juliet appeared again, it was to cross a line from which she would never return, because what she tried to do to me, it was crueler than any signed paper. It was on a muggy afternoon, with the smell of rain that never comes, that Denise knocked on my gate. She has lived in the corner house for over 30 years. White hair, I see, trembling voice, always so respectful. That day, her face had something different, a heavy air, like someone who carries a truth that has been kept for too long. I need to talk to you, surely, but it's about something that maybe you'd rather not know. I invited her in, offered her tea, but she refused. He sat on the edge of the armchair as if he didn't want to linger. I was at the Kroger supermarket last week. I went to get flour and ended up listening to her daughter-in-law. She didn't see me. I was with a friend, laughing out loud, and said a phrase that chilled me inside. I was silent. She took a deep breath. Juliet said, the old woman doesn't even realize that everything she has is already ours. She's just warming up the place for us. I felt a chill go up my spine. Denise lowered her eyes, and before I could say anything, she added, and later, I met Marcus in the parking lot. I greeted him, started a conversation, and he said, Wanda, Denise, it's not fair that I have to wait for her to die to receive what is rightfully mine. This should be settled by now. My heart didn't beat faster. He hit it slower, as if every word of her took away the little air I had left. I thanked him with a contained smile. But my eyes, they spoke for me, tearful, firm. What Denise brought me was not just gossip. It was the confirmation I wasn't being forgotten. I was being taken out. Manwards hung. Erased. Lee. Calculatedly. Wow. That was not lovelessness. It was flat. Lee. A delicate robbery. Done in silence. With white gloves and fake smiles. After Denise left, I closed the windows, dimmed the lights in the living room, and went to the bedroom. There, how, in the last drawer of the closet, was a cardboard box lined with lilac fabric. Inside it, dozens of letters I've written to Marcus since the day he was born. Some with blue pen, others with black ink. They were records of love. One and selber schön. Others, advice, outbursts never sent. I picked up the box, sat on the floor of the hallway, and started to reread it. One by one, Kakim, Didia, Onisiro. Each line pulled me back to a time when he was still my boy. My boy, not that man who now mocked my existence among the shelves of a supermarket. Around dawn, I chose only one to keep. The first, written on the day he was born, with my handwriting shaky and my heart bursting with emotion. He said, "Noirdes Kaklomal. You are my miracle, Marcus, my new beginning. And even if one day you forget me, I will always remember that. For a moment, I said, "Cow, I was the whole world for you." The others, I took it to the backyard. No, Wolkaba. I lit a thick candle. Wow. Put the cards inside my husband's old iron pot and watched the flames consume everything. Each burning leaf was a silent mourning, but also a rebirth, because hurt can hold us, but lucidity sets us free. And I knew, to move forward, I needed to stop waiting for feedback from those who only gave me noise. It was there, under that cloudy sky, that I promised myself, I will no longer look for my son in memories. I'm going to find myself again in the woman who survived it all and who was still standing. And if you think that was the end of the pain, wait until you hear what she did when she found out that I changed the will. Because there are people who, when contradicted, reveal the worst. And what did Juliet do next? Exceeded any limit of decency. That year, Thanksgiving arrived with clear skies. But inside me, everything was different. For the first time in 45 years, I didn't buy the turkey. I didn't mash potatoes, prepare cranberry sauce, or take good dishes out of the cupboard. The kitchen, which was always teeming with smells and memories at this time, was quiet, and it wasn't sadness. It was a choice. Marcus sent a message earlier in the week. "Mom, well, wait for you here at dinner." Wood Towns. Juliet memorized everything. An invitation that seemed more obligation than affection. A loft in Midtown, decorated with furniture that I never understood how it was paid for. Expensive carpets, modern lamps. How? Soulless art? Nay, unapologetic. They thought I would appear there as an extra in the exclusion itself. But no, I wouldn't go. No more. On Thursday, well, Tom, I put on my blue wool coat the same one I wore to Marcus' graduation, and went to the market early in the morning. I bought potatoes, some leeks, and a generous slice of rye bread. At home, I prepared a thick, well seasoned soup, the way my mother did when the outside world seemed too big. I put the record player on and let Ella Fitzgerald fill the space. Her voice glided across the walls, tenderly, and I allowed myself to sit alone at the table, with my warm bowl, a slice of bread, and a blanket on my legs. It was not loneliness. He was careful. Turned I saw on the table lies I left a folded letter with a simple bow. On the envelope, well, Hacksterdale, Oxterbudseyo, I wrote, now, for when you go looking for answers, and I left it there, not because I expected them to come and get it, but because I needed to register in words, on paper, in presence. I didn't go looking for drama. But honest, Tarsus come, nor did I miss it. I went to find something that had eluded me for a long time. Peace. Meanwhile, mice, on the other side of town, they took pictures smiling on plates I didn't cook, with candles I didn't light, and with presences that didn't include me. I saw some images later. Someone tagged their house in a public post, all in white, all toasting, all looking happy. But you know when we look at a photo and feel the silence behind the smiles? That's that. Not all joy is real, and not every absence is a loss. I stood there with Ella singing softly, and let the night pass like a warm breeze through the window. The wind shook the dry leaves in the yard. I remembered so many autumns that passed by that balcony, so many full tables, so much life that revolved around me. And I realized nostalgia doesn't kill. What kills is pretending that you are not dying inside. And I chose to live again. In my time, was rusty. In my place. Sometimes we keep certain days in our memory, as if they were old objects in a drawer. But there are days that are anchors, and that Thanksgiving was an anchor of silence, but a clean silence. No hurt, no charge, a silence of mine. Oh, if you've experienced something like this, or know someone who has gone through it, share it with me here in the comments. I really wanted to read it. Sometimes all we need is to know that we weren't the only one to feel it. And if you think that was the end, that silence solved everything, get ready, because pain has a curious way of returning when we least expect it. And what arrived in the mail days later, Town, made me realize that they still hadn't given up. The coldest blow was yet to come. Aunt Mildred's wake took place in a small chapel in Macon, surrounded by those tall trees that seemed to whisper in the wind. She was 97 years old. It was my last maternal reference. A firm woman, with a look that crossed us to the bone. When I was a little girl, I spent summers on her farm, and it was from her that I learned that silence also educates. You don't need to shout to be heard. Surely, she said, Yandiwa, Ori so. Firmness lives in the look. That day, as I greeted acquaintances and held the hands of those who still remembered my name, I felt that she was there with me, not in the coffin, nay, I am too, but in me. I was now the last link in that line of women who did not lower their heads. The hall was full, but silent. Low music in the background. No one still desire on house. White flowers. People I hadn't seen for years. And then, wow, between the crowns and the rows of dark wood benches, they arrived. These are my Marcus, with his under-ironed suit, Juliet, in a dress too tight for the occasion. They entered as if they were entering a meeting, not a mourning. Marcus' eyes came to me with something that looked like discomfort. Juliet's, with something I couldn't name, maybe provocation, maybe mockery, approached. I was standing next to the coffin, holding Aunt Mildred's little Bible. Juliet was the first to speak. We missed you at dinner. Surely, my. The table was empty. Her voice was too sweet, too fake. I kept my gaze fixed, unhurried, and I replied, the hunger you have is not for food. It's a possession. The phrase came out tame. No anger, but it was like a stone in the lake. Marcus stepped forward. Now, his voice half choked. Mom, this is not the time for that. I turned around slowly, looked at him as if looking at an old photograph. And he said, "Oh, you have forgotten who taught you to hold a fork. And now you think you can swallow me?" The silence that formed after that was dense. It cut the air. The people who were nearby disguised themselves, lowered their eyes. But I knew, wow, every word that came out of my mouth in that chapel would be marked. Because it wasn't a scene. It was true. It was history. Mom. And it was the first time I had spoken in public about what I had been keeping secret. Juliet tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Marcus crossed his arms, as he did as a child, and was contradicted. But I didn't say it anymore. I didn't say it anymore. I turned my face and walked down the aisle, where I left a white rose at Aunt Mildred's feet. I knelt down, prayed, and I asked her for strength to continue, because there, now how, the body not just sejum, open salknat, in that room full of memories and absences, I understood once and for all, they were not going to stop. Internal burn, under vision loud key. And if I wanted to protect what little was still mine, my home, my name, my peace, I would have to go all the way. But do you know what struck me the most at that moment? It was realizing that I was no longer afraid of them, nor what they could take away. Because what is really ours, no one takes. It can even try to erase, humiliate, silence, but those who have firm roots do not bend easily. And that wake was the rehearsal of my last answer, the most profound, the most unexpected. Because a few days later, a court summons arrived, and with it, a lie so big that I hardly believed that anyone would have the courage to invent it. But they did. And the silent war that used to be only between walls, now it was going to start in court. Can you imagine what they claimed? Wait until you hear it. It's chilling. That morning, the sky was too clear, as if God wanted to tell me it was time. I sat at the kitchen table, miljonerm, and the fighting the temporalist of a cigarette, with the cup of tea in my hand and the paperwork next to it. The envelope was ready, sealed with my name, full address, and the notary stamp right at the top. Inside, no wig ternom, let it stay still down. I put three things: a copy of the New Testament, with the host institution as the legitimate heir to my house, the extract from the legal fund, showing every detail of the shielding I had done, and, finally, a short note, handwritten, was sterile, with the firmness of someone who no longer needed to shout. What is mine now is far from you. I took it to the post office on Covington Highway, delivered it with acknowledgement of receipt. I returned home with light steps, not because it didn't hurt, it still did, but because now the pain no longer ruled me. 4 days later, my phone rang. No number. I, Titirum, Okiwachto, answered. No. On the other side, my son's voice, muffled, hesitant, now on a sudden taub, other town, as if swallowing stones before speaking. Mom, Polish stone, inserter, Angeli, Apnecta, Apundicard, and we received the papers. I didn't say anything. He continued. Now, Tom, I know things got out of hand. It was stress, the work, the pressure. Juliet sometimes exaggerates. I know. But all this, it didn't have to come to that. He spoke as if trying to glue a vase that has already turned to dust. He tried to pull me back with guilt, with excuses, with justifications, but I just waited for him to finish. And when the last word dragged on in the silence, I said, Mom, I didn't have to kill the children now. Son, no, tell me, what do you are? You stopped listening to me long before I stopped talking, and I hung up. No anger, no rush, no turning back. That afternoon, I called the locksmith, Mill, a friendly, Ansiwam, soft-spoken gentleman who took less than an hour to change all the locks in the house. He offered me to install a new, more modern peephole. Accepted. Now. Then I went to the cell phone store and asked for a new number. What? A number that only 5 people would have. My neighbor Denise, the lawyer Leonard, the coordinator of the community center, and 2 friends from the church. The world I knew was shrinking, but for the first time, it fit me. The following week, I signed up for a free painting course for senior women, right there at the Decatur Community Center. Every Wednesday, I walked there with my cloth bag and a new notebook. He sat in the second row, took the brushes out of the box and dipped the silence in the paint. I painted flowers, old streets, faceless portraits. I painted the balcony of my childhood, and even a picture from the back of a boy in a red t-shirt, sitting on a swing. Wow. No one knew who it was. but I knew, and it was there, among colors that I had never mixed before, that I understood what freedom is. It's when we stop asking to be seen and begins to see himself. Ah, and if this story has already made you feel something, just wait to see what they tried to do when they realized they had lost control. Because their next step, it was the dirtiest and the most desperate. They thought they could out like you blow out a candle at a fancy dinner, that it was enough to open an expensive wine, pose smiling for Instagram, and wait for me to disappear like dust. But life, Pyong, life has its own way of returning each seed planted. No. And some flowers are born with thorns that come back to pierce the hand of those who tried to crush the root. Shortly after that last call, the rumors began. First, came the news that the loft in Midtown was in arrears. 2 months without paying the mortgage. Later, a mutual neighbor, the son of Mrs. Judith, my longtime friend, told me that he had seen a moving truck parked in front of their building. It looks like you're giving the apartment back to the bank, Mrs. Mao. Surely, he said, a little embarrassed. I just nodded. Silence is sometimes a better shelter than any explanation. Juliet, who was so keen to flaunt sophistication, was now temporarily living with her mother in Tampa. And Marcus, well, Marcus had rented a room in an old townhouse in East Point. A friend from church brought me the gossip unintentionally while helping me in the kitchen of the community center. Wow, it looks like they've broken up. Shirley wanted him. She threw his clothes out the window. They said they fought badly, that he lied about money saved. I continued chopping onions without saying anything, but inside, I felt that mixture of pity and justice, because there are things that we don't even wish on the enemy, but there are things that we simply accept as returns. They tried to sustain a lie that time could not keep standing. The money they wanted so much became a reason for fighting. The image of a happy couple built on top of my exclusion cracked like badly glued porcelain. Julieta discovered that Marcus had embezzled part of an amount that, according to her, would be used to invest in a business together. But he spent it paying off debts of his own name, debts she didn't even know existed. And when she demanded explanations, he responded with that old tone I know well. Victimization. If you hadn't taken me away from my mother, Western you trot to your well, none of this would have happened. She screamed. He called him weak. He said that he never cut the cord. That deep down, he wanted to continue being the spoiled little boy who waited for everything to fall into his lap. The separation was public. Oh, bitter, dirty. Mutual friends drifted apart. The parties are gone. The photos stopped. And what was left was exactly what they tried to take away from me. Silence. But this time, it was the silence of abandonment, of emptiness, the same one that once lived on my balcony. Now it dwelt in their eyes. They said Marcus tried to look for me, which went to my old address. He knocked on the door, called, but there was no response, because there weren't so. In that house he tried to take from me, now lives another lady, a retired teacher, widowed, who also knew how to say no at the right time. What about my address? Oh, changed. It changed like me. Because sometimes we don't need to run away to protect ourselves. Just change places, inside and out. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like this video and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. And if you think that was the end of the story, wait, because just as everything seemed to finally settle down, one last surprise knocked on my new door. And what was inside that envelope, no one could predict. That day, I woke up before the sun. The light had not yet touched the sky, but my chest was already lit in another way. I put on my lilac dress, the one I only wear at times that mark. It has no glitter, no frills, but it was sewn by the hands of a friend who also knows the weight of loneliness. Around her neck, my grandmother Ruth's old necklace. She wore it to Sunday masses. I once said that one day he would remind me of who I am. And there, while I looked at myself in the mirror of the dressing table, I understood. I was not going to receive just one tribute. I was going to give back to my history, the place they tried to steal. The community center was decked out with white balloons and lavender, the tables with tablecloths embroidered by the regulars themselves. A lot of people from the city, women who called me by name, even though I had only exchanged 2 or 3 glances with them before. It was as if my pain had found an echo in other voices, other footsteps, other silences. The event was about awareness and financial protection for elderly women. But it was more than that. It was a reunion between those who survived being forgotten. They called my name on the microphone. Mrs. Shirley Davis, please take the stage. The applause started small, but they have grown in a way that my heart almost didn't fit. I walked slowly but steadily, like someone who steps on the ground he learned to call his own. When I got up there, the microphone was already waiting for me, and for the first time in a long time, I spoke without anyone trying to correct me. I was a teacher for 40 years. I taught grammar, but it was life that taught me punctuation. I spent decades believing that the end point was the end, but I learned that can also be a new beginning. Today, I put an end to the silence they imposed on me, and I begin a new sentence, written with dignity. The audience stood up, not out of pity, but out of respect. It was as if each woman there said, without words, "We saw it, we know, we understand, and at that time, I felt that my story was no longer mine alone. It rode where others could walk with less fear. During the delivery of the plaque, I saw in the eyes of the organizers something that Marcus and Julieta never saw in me. Value. Why? Not for what I could offer, but for who I was. And it was there, holding that tribute in my hands, that I realized something simple but profound. They tried to erase my name from the papers, and I engraved my name in the history of other women. And if you've come this far, listening to me? I want to tell you something. Not everything we lose is loss. Sometimes losing is the first step to finding what is true. And if this story has touched you, stay with me a little longer, Ma, because when I came home after the tribute, I found a crumpled envelope tucked under my door. There was no sender, Oliana, no shikao, but the content. The content almost made my hands tremble. You will understand why. It was on a calm afternoon, one of those in which the sky seems to sleep on top of the city, that I saw his silhouette standing at the gate. Marcus, alone, near and how, the same frayed backpack on his shoulder. No, the kid of nine. His shoulders hunched as if carrying years of unspoken things. Inside the window, I was quiet. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't wave. I didn't rush to open it. I just looked. He hesitated for a moment, as if he was expecting something, maybe a gesture from me, maybe a chance to start over. But nothing came. Then he took an envelope out of his pocket and slowly placed it on the iron frame of the gate. He stayed there for another minute. Then he turned his back and walked away with heavy, almost shuffling steps. I only moved when the sun was already starting to set behind the trees on the street. I picked up the envelope carefully, as if picking up the past with the tips of my fingers. I recognized the handwriting from afar. It was his. I opened it slowly, already feeling my heart beating in a strange way. Between tenderness and tiredness, inside, Nanan, a few handwritten words. No, a bit of you I stepped to one. Mom, you were right. Forgive me. That was it. No justification. No explanation. Only the raw confession, without flourish. I closed my eyes for a moment. I took a deep breath. I read it again, and I did. I didn't cry. I stayed in Sonistikesta. I don't know the mark, but he doesn't smile either. It was a lament that came late, after all that had been broken and swept away, after burned letters, locked doors and silent birthdays. He had lost me, and only now did she seem to realize that it wasn't the house she needed. It was the lap, the presence, the mother who was there until the last moment, until the moment he chose absence. I went to the nightstand drawer, took out a neutral envelope, white paper, and a black fine-tipped pen. I wrote a few words, too, because sometimes what hurts doesn't need much to be understood. Love without respect is debt overdue. I put it in the mail the next morning, without a sender, but with a certain destination, not to hurt, but to close, because, sorry, I give, but I return. I only give to those who stay. And it was in this silence that now belongs to me that something began to change inside, as if life said to me, now, yes, surely, now you are ready. But ready for what? Anya, my dear, that's what you'll find out. Being iron, because the next step, it was the most beautiful of all, and no one, not even him, could have imagined what I was about to do. I moved in on a rainy Friday. No moving trucks, no stacked boxes. I took with me only the essentials: my clothes, some books, my plants in worn pots, and a kettle that still beeps on the stove as if calling for conversation. The new house is in East Point, a quiet block of neighbors who greet with their eyes and leave cornbread at the door without a ticket. It's small. Yes, yes, but it has a large balcony that catches the afternoon sun. Well, and a garden that welcomed me as if it already knew the pain I had in my heels. On the first Sunday, I planted rosemary and lavender near the fence. I rearranged the kitchen shelves to the sound of Nina Simone. In the evening, I sat on the porch step, with a light blanket over my shoulders, and spoke with the Times. I told him that we were at peace now, that there was no more hurry, nor pendency. And for the first time, I felt that he heard me. Not as a judge, but an old friend who just hoped I would choose to stay. I began to write my memoirs in a blue hardcover notebook, not with the intention of becoming a famous book, nor of drawing applause. I just wanted to leave it on record at the community center. There on the shelf, next to the teapot and the crochet hooks, stories of a woman who learned to listen to herself. I wrote on the first page. No last name, no dedication, because there are things that are only ours, and that's enough. My mornings are now slow and good. I walk around the neighborhood with my worn sneakers. I wave to the girl at the flower stand. And what in a more updated. I buy fresh tomatoes at the corner market. Sometimes I stop at a bench in the square and stand there, watching the leaves fall, as if the world was in no hurry. The cell phone? It's stored in a drawer. When you can't. And if someone wants to find me, they will have to learn to knock on the door of silence with respect. These days, a lady I met at the community center asked me why I smiled so much now. Didn't. I smiled again. Star. Looked up at the sky and replied, because I learned to live where I am welcome, even if it's within myself. And when I finished saying it, I felt a relief, as if my whole body said, now, yes, surely, now you have arrived home. But, life still holds its whims, because just when I thought everything had settled down, I received an unexpected call. And what they said on the other end of the line, well, that was something that even I couldn't have predicted. And maybe, just maybe, it's the last chapter this story needed. The call was from the director of the community center. I said that a young woman wanted to meet me. Social work student. I had watched the tribute and read the first pages of my blue notebook. She said she wanted to write her thesis on women who start over after 70. I laughed to myself. I never saw myself as anyone's thesis. But I went. I found a girl with big eyes, attentive ears, and a heart in the place. I told him everything. No rush, no flourish. And in the end, she looked at me tenderly and said, "You have become a lighthouse." That stayed with me, because No. You see, I didn't raise my hand. I didn't scream. I didn't slam the door. Well, I just left. And along the way, I put my name back on the walls of my own world. I went home. I was a table. Near steward. Well, Nistajed. I'm so empty and so gay. I was a mother. I was silent. Today, well, I am wind, and who one day tried to silence me. Now he only hears the echo of what he lost. As for Marcus and Juliet, I've heard that they live in different cities now. He teaches math at a public school in Alabama. She deleted social media. I don't hate them. I don't expect them either. I understood that some people come from us, but they don't belong to us. And that love, when it is not cared for, dries up like a rootless plant. But what they lost, it was something that I myself had to learn to see. A whole woman who survived everything, even the one she claimed to love. If there's one thing this story has taught me, it's that dignity doesn't make noise. It does not impose itself. It does not demand. She simply withdraws. And when he comes back, it's like a good breeze after a heavy day. I learned that we don't need to prove anything for those who chose not to see it. That forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves, not to the other. And that, starting over, even late, no, is an act of courage and also of self-love. You may have been forgotten, cast aside, they don't away, talk so, erased and all. But as long as there's breath, you can rekindle yourself. Thank you, Thom, from the heart, for listening to me so far. Sometimes all we need is a safe corner to tell our story. And if somehow mine found space in your heart, I thank you as someone who offers a hot coffee on a cold day. Leave a like here. It's like a hug that warms the soul and strengthens this channel. And if you want to come back for another prose, sign up. This balcony here is yours too. Tell me in the comments. Where do you listen to me from? Which city do you call home? I'd love to know how far my voice has reached. And it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.